Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the new AMC and AMC Plus series Nautilus, based on Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, about the adventures of Captain Nemo on his submarine called the Nautilus, which is going to premiere on June 29th of this year on AMC Plus, and which I've been lucky enough to be able to see the first 2 episodes of. As I always say, it's good to be a pop culture journalist with a growing YouTube channel. Anyway, the series stars Shazad Latif as Captain Nemo, and of course, sci-fi fans will remember Shazad Latif from Star Trek Discovery, on which he played Ash Tyler. His main co-star on the show is Georgia Flood, who plays a very interesting character called Humility Lucas, and who, to me, bears a striking resemblance to Helena Bonham Carter, though when my wife sees Miss Flood, she thinks of Keira Knightley, so I don't know. But anyway, the first 2 episodes were called Anatha and Tick Tick Boom. The first episode starts off in 1857 in India, where Captain Nemo has been enslaved by the British East India Company and forced to work on the construction of the Nautilus, which the East India Company has apparently entered a contract to build with the British government to use as a weapon, although the main engineer on the project was told that it was going to be used for exploration. It turns out, though, that Nimoy and some of his fellow slaves have been planning to steal the Nautilus once it was ready for launch so that they could escape captivity. And they end up having to do that a little sooner than they had planned, because the overseer of the project from the East India Company decides to move the construction elsewhere rather than finishing the construction there, which was originally the plan. So they have to steal it ahead of schedule, which unfortunately leads to the death of Captain Nemo's close friend, who was a slave there with him. Of course, once they escape, it isn't long before they run into Humility Lucas and her, I want to say, bodyguard? A woman named Lot, a formidable woman named Lot, I should say, played by Celine Neville, when they find themselves in conflict with an East India Company ship on which the 2 ladies are sailing to Bombay, where Humility is supposed to meet her fiancé. The crew of the Nautilus end up besting the East India Company ship, leaving its crew stranded on lifeboats, from which Humility and Lot are rescued, along with a young boy who was also sailing on the ship by the name of Blaster, and his dog. So over the course of the 2 episodes that I saw, the Nautilus, of course, is on the run from the East India Company, which, of course, wants to get the Nautilus back post-haste. And I really like the series so far. The ship design is excellent. The aesthetic is excellent. Shazad Latif does an excellent job as Nemo. I really didn't like his character on Star Trek Discovery, but I really like his version of Nemo, and he's doing an excellent job. I really like both the Humility character and the Lot character. I think they're very cool in different ways. In fact, it turns out that Humility is an engineer, having been taught engineering by her dad, who was an engineer, which is interesting for a woman from 1857. But that plays an interesting part in the first 2 episodes, as does the fact that she doesn't really want to meet up with her fiancé in Bombay, and doesn't want to be, as she puts it, imprisoned by marriage. Though her fiancé, a British lord, very much wants to make her his wife, and is in fact aboard the primary East India Company ship that is pursuing the Nautilus, a gigantic metal monster of a ship called the Dreadnought, which makes complete sense. Interesting tie to Star Trek as well there, because in the 2009 film Star Trek, the enemy ship commanded by Admiral Marcus is, of course, a Dreadnought class, named the Dreadnought. So that was interesting. But yeah, all of that is happening. And in addition to that, we learn that Nemo is, in fact, an Indian prince, that he was kidnapped from, I guess, his palace, or where he lives in the royal compound in India, with a wife and, I guess, a child that he needs to get back to. And we also learn that his main objective at this point is to find an old Viking treasure at or called the Pillars of Helvar, which he says will enable him and the crew and whoever ends up being allied with them to basically run the world, to put down the East India Company, which, by the way, of course, was a real company and which was really, really powerful in the 19th century, and basically run the world, I assume benevolently. So I think that's going to make for an interesting, season once the whole thing arrives on AMC. But again, so far it's really a good show. The performances are great. The visuals are great. I mean, there are a couple of scenes involving whales that are just really cool. And, there's some action sequences involving, I guess, what you could call depth charges, primitive depth charges that are launched against the Nautilus by the East India Company at one point when the guy overseeing the chase of the Nautilus decides that if they have to destroy it rather than let it go, that's preferable if they can't, actually recoup it. And members of the Nautilus crew are interesting in their own ways, and it adds, some comedy to it, and that's always good. And the Blaster character, the kid, is pretty cool, so it's good that he's there. And of course, everyone loves the little dog. But without giving you a full breakdown of the plots of both episodes, that's pretty much my review of the first two episodes of season one of Nautilus, which I got to see early and which is coming to AMC and AMC Plus on June 29th. So I think everybody should check it out. It's pretty good so far. But that's really it. So I'm going to get out of here. I will be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.